Inside courtroom number 1 of the Supreme Court of India, the air was calm until suddenly it wasn't. An advocate stood up during a live hearing, removed his shoe, and almost threw it towards the Chief Justice of India, B.R. Gavai. The entire courtroom just froze. Security rushed forward, and yet the CJI didn't flinch. He simply looked up and said calmly, "This does not affect me," and continued the hearing as if nothing happened. But outside the courtroom, it was a storm. Because this wasn't just a random outburst, it was an act of a protest and possibly a contempt of court. So, what really happened? Why did an advocate, someone who sworn to uphold the dignity of law, turn his anger towards the very seat of justice? Let's start from the beginning. So, what actually happened? The shocking scene unfolded on October 6th inside the Supreme Court. The man, Advocate Rakesh Kishore, aged around 71, was present during a hearing led by the Chief Justice B.R. Gavai. Midway through, he suddenly removed his shoe and hurled it towards the bench. The shoe missed, but the message landed. Within seconds, court security restrained him. The Chief Justice unfazed and continued his proceedings. No chaos, no reaction, just silence. And that silence spoke volumes. Because in the courtroom of India's top judge, an advocate just crossed the line between protest and contempt. When questioned later, Advocate Rakesh Kishore didn't deny what he did. He said it wasn't anger, it was emotion, a protest against mockery of Sanatan Dharma. The spark behind this act was an earlier case involving the reconstruction of Lord Vishnu idol at Khajuraho. During that hearing, CJI Gavai reportedly made a remark that many interpreted as sarcastic, something like, "Go and ask the deity to restore itself." That single line hit him deeply. In his words, I was hurt by the court's attitude towards our fate. He claimed that he wasn't drunk, not frustrated, and just determined to make a point. And when asked later if he regretted his action, he said, "No regret, no repentance." In fact, just hours later, he posted up on the platform X saying that only 7 people came to protest against my action. That means most lawyers indirectly support me in standing up against the anti Hindu Supreme Court. So, while the Bar Council called his act as disgraceful, he's painting it as a symbolic, a fight for faith. But here's the reality: inside the courtroom, it doesn't matter what your cause is. Because the moment you throw a shoe at the Chief Justice of India, it stops being a protest and becomes a contempt. Within hours of the incident, the Bar Council of India took swift action. Advocate Rakesh Kishore's license to practice law was suspended. The official statement called his behavior inconsistent with the dignity of the court and said it tarnishes the image of the legal profession itself. The suspension means he cannot appear, plead, or act before any court or tribunal across India until disciplinary proceedings are completed. Several lawyers' associations across the country condemned his act, calling it an attack on the institution of justice. But here's the interesting part. While the Bar Council moved fast, the Chief Justice himself chose not to. He didn't order his arrest, didn't shout, didn't even pause the hearing. He simply continued saying that this does not affect me. That calmness spoke louder than any contempt order. Still, legally speaking, the act could amount to criminal contempt of court under Section 2C of the Contempt of Courts Act 1971 for scandalizing or lowering the authority of the court. And what's the punishment of it? Up to 6 months of jail or a fine or both. In the eyes of the law, this isn't a misconduct. It's an open challenge to the judicial authority. Because when someone throws a shoe inside the courtroom, it's a Supreme Court. It's not just one person's anger, it's an attack on the sanctity of the system itself. This isn't the first time India had seen shoes fly in the protest or the contempt cases that shake the system. Let's rewind. Back in 2009, journalist Jarnail Singh made headlines when he threw the shoe at Home Minister P. Chidambaram during a press conference about the 1984 riots, anti-Sikh riots. He wasn't arrested, but it sparked a nationwide debate. Where's the line between protest and disrespect? Fast forward to 2020, a senior advocate, Prashant Bhushan, was convicted of criminal contempt for his tweets criticizing the Supreme Court and then CJI SA Bobde. The court imposed a symbolic fine of just 1 rupee, but the message was clear. Criticism is fine, but scandalizing the court isn't. Even earlier, the Justice Leela Seth wrote about how courtroom discipline is not negotiable. Because if judges lose the control of their courtroom, the institution itself crumbles. More recently, in 2025, the Allahabad High Court found a man guilty of criminal contempt for something as small as sending a WhatsApp message accusing a lower court judge of bribery. The punishment for it, a 2000 rupees fine, but again, the message was firm. You don't undermine the judiciary's authority, not even outside the courtroom. And now, inside the Supreme Court, an advocate has taken a defiance to the whole new level, turning protest into physical confrontation. These incidents may seem different, but they all orbit around the one principle: the thin, fragile line between dissent and the contempt. If you cross it and you aren't just defying a person, you are defying the very seat of justice. This incident isn't just about one shoe or one man's anger. It's a mirror reflection of deeper cracks between faith, freedom, and judiciary's authority. On one hand, you have an advocate claiming he acted out of devotion, defending his religion from what he calls a judicial mockery. On the other hand, you have the highest court of the country, a constitutional temple that demands silence, order, and respect. The clash isn't between a man and a judge, it's between emotion and institution. Because when courts are seen as mocking faith, outrage brews. But when citizens cross the line to attack the judges, justice itself becomes vulnerable. Think about it. If every person who feels hurt by a court remark could likely, decides to protest with aggression, how long before hearings turn into chaos? Yet the flip side is just as important. Are courts listening enough? Are judges aware of how their words echo outside those walls? I don't think so, because faith isn't logic, it's an emotion. And when emotion feels insulted, even a courtroom can turn into a battlefield. The lesson here is bigger than the contempt law. It's about balance. The judiciary must uphold its dignity, but it must also understand its power to provoke. A single remark can become a spark. And as we saw this week, that spark can turn into a shoe flying towards the nation's top judge. So here's where we stand. An advocate threw a shoe inside the Supreme Court, not out of madness, but out of conviction. He says it was faith. The system calls it a contempt, and the CJI calls it nothing. Three reactions to one incident, and between them lies the real question: where does dissent end and disrespect begin? Because if every hurt sentiment becomes a protest in court, then justice itself becomes unsafe. But if people feel that they can't question judges, even when hurt, then the system becomes untouchable. The truth is, both extremes are dangerous. Courts are the temple of law, not arenas of outrage and protest. No matter how justified loses its powers to the moment it crosses to the aggression. Maybe this act was meant to send a message. Maybe it did. But what it really shows is how fragile the balance between faith and law has become in today's India. Because when emotions enter in courtroom, even the law starts shaking. So I'll leave you with this. Was Rajesh Kishore act desperate cry for respect, or it was a shameful attack on the judicial dignity? Was it courage or contempt? Tell me in the comments. Where do you think the line should be drawn? Because when respect for the court falls, justice doesn't walk, it lives. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Legality with Reality, and hit the bell icon so you can get the next video.